So the Naked Gun is back, and unfortunately it might need to be arrested for comedy fraud. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to my review of The Naked Gun 2025. Let's start with expectations, and mine were pretty darn high. This wasn't just another remake or reboot to me. The Naked Gun franchise is legendary for a reason. Its rapid-fire jokes, slapstick brilliance, and Leslie Nielsen's pun delivery that helped define a whole style of comedy. Going back into that world felt like a bold move, but one that I was genuinely excited for. I was curious how the humor would translate in 2025, but I had faith they'd find a smart way to balance the classic style with modern sensibilities. The idea of seeing that brand of comedy again on the big screen, especially with Liam Neeson stepping into the Drebin legacy, was enough to give me hope this could work. But man, I walked out of the theater disappointed, severely disappointed. Disappointed! From the first 10 minutes, something felt off, and by the end of it, I realized the movie just didn't work for me at all. Not only did it fail to deliver the laughs I was hoping for, but it also seemed to completely misunderstand the timing and charm that made the original films so great. I didn't come into this with arms crossed. I wanted to laugh, and I gave it every chance. But when I looked around and saw that the audience around me was equally quiet, that sealed it. This wasn't just me being nitpicky, the movie just didn't land. The story this time around revolves around Frank Drebin's son, who's now a detective himself, trying to live up to his father's ridiculous legacy while finding his own way. He ends up getting tangled in a conspiracy that involves a corrupt energy tycoon and a ridiculous plot to manipulate world events for profit, alongside a young partner in the love interest who feels more like a plot device than a character. Drebin Jr. stumbles through mishaps, explosions, and parodies galore. The structure follows that familiar Naked Gun formula, crime plot mixed with comedy set pieces, but the execution just isn't there. Starting off with the positives, the casting isn't bad. Liam Neeson, while obviously not the same as Leslie Nielsen, gives it his best shot. You can tell he's having fun, and that effort does come through in certain scenes. One area where the film does deserve some genuine praise is in its production design. The sets are vibrant, detailed, and do a surprisingly solid job of recapturing the hyper-exaggerated, cartoon-like atmosphere that made the original Naked Gun films so visually distinct. From the overly dramatic police station interiors to the absurdly opulent villain lairs, the environments feel right at home in this world of slapstick chaos. There's a clear effort to honor the aesthetic of the originals, with backgrounds often filled with small gags and playful touches that reflect the series' trademark absurdity. Say what you want about the writing and performances, but visually, it does look like a Naked Gun movie, and that counts for something. And I also have to point out the scene during the end credits. It was actually fun, with a few visual gags that felt truer to the spirit of the originals than most of the film did. If more of the movie had that kind of creativity and timing, this review would be a lot different. But the negatives, oh, there are a lot. The biggest issue is just how funny most of the movie is. That sounds harsh, but it's true. There were only 2 scenes that made me genuinely laugh, and I don't mean smirking, all soft chuckles, I mean actual laughter. That's a huge problem for a film like this. It's not just my sense of humor either. The entire theater was quiet for long stretches, and for a movie being hyped as the funniest film of the year, that silence speaks volumes. The comedy relies way too much on loud delivery and exaggerated performances, rather than smart setups and punchlines. The acting, while undeniably energetic, leans so heavily into being over the top that it quickly becomes more irritating than funny. Instead of sharp comedic timing or witty delivery, we get a lot of yelling, exaggerated facial expressions, and actors constantly flying around like they're in a sketch show that doesn't know when to pull back. Everyone seems to be trying way too hard to be funny, mugging directly at the camera or humming it up to a distracting degree. It lacks the finesse and controlled chaos that made the original films work so well. Leslie Nielsen's brilliance came from his calm, straight-faced delivery in absurd situations. Here, it feels like the entire cast is just screaming, hoping something sticks. The villain is another big letdown. One of the things that made the original Naked Gun films work so well was that even the bad guys had some charisma or comic presence. Here, nothing. The villain is generic, forgettable, and brings zero tension or humor. And when you get to the final act, it just fizzles out. The climax feels rushed, uninspired, and frankly boring. A flat end to a movie that already felt like it was running on fumes. By the time it was over, I wasn't laughing, I was checking the time. To wrap it all up, I thought The Naked Gun 2025 was just fine, and I mean just fine. It's not unwatchable, but it is incredibly disappointing and extremely overrated. This movie was supposed to be a triumphant return for one of the funniest franchises ever made, and instead, it just felt like a modern studio comedy trying too hard without understanding why the original worked in the first place. It had a few moments, but not enough to carry it. I'm giving The Naked Gun 2025 a 5.5 out of 10. But hey, that's just how I felt. What did you think of The Naked Gun? Did it have you laughing, or were you just sitting there like me, waiting for something to actually land? Drop your thoughts down below. I'm really curious if this one worked better for you than it did for me.